Konnichiwa, minasan. O genki desu ka? Welcome to the intermediate course of my channel. Let's learn Japanese with Eric. If you have minimal background in the Japanese language or have limited knowledge of Japanese particles, adjective, and basic verb conjugation, or how Japanese sentences are put together, please review the playlist of the basic course, which covers lessons 1 to 31, and watch the video you need makeup lessons on. Otherwise, let's begin. Hajimemashou. In the previous lesson, in lesson 43, we learned how to make noun-based subordinate clauses by putting the verb in its plain form right before the noun. In this lesson, we will learn two more ways to form subordinate clauses, by using KOTO and by using the particle no. We will examine when we can use KOTO only, when we can use no only, and when we can use either. In essence, these two transform whole sentences that end in either a noun, adjective, or verb into a subordinate clause that the subordinate clause becomes grammatically a noun and can substitute wherever a noun can be found within a sentence, whether that's a subject, predicate, a direct or indirect object, and so on. That process is called nominalization. In English, KOTO means fact, and together with no, they roughly translate to the fact that, and makes nouns of infinitives. For example, to eat is fun, or nouns of gerunds. For example, eating is fun. Using KOTO and no, you can now make complex Japanese sentences out of the following. Singing is fun. Singing is grammatically a noun here and has to be nominalized. To live is to love somebody. Both to live and to love somebody have to be nominalized. I'll indicate the nominalized subordinate clauses in the next examples in lavender. I like playing the piano. Did you know she got married last year? I saw Mommy kissing Santa Claus. It was she who killed him. I understood from the news that he is famous. So all lavender-colored parts are nominalized using KOTO and or no in Japanese. So when do you use KOTO and when do you use no? For the most part, both are interchangeable. For example, the sentence, singing is fun. In Japanese, utau koto wa tanoshii desu. Utau koto wa tanoshii desu. The verb utau, to sing, is nominalized using KOTO. Just like before, the verb has to be in the plain style. You can also use no to nominalize and say, utau no wa tanoshii desu. Utau no wa tanoshii desu. The difference is that when you use no, you have an emotional connection to the sentence. Maybe you like singing personally and are speaking from experience, whereas using KOTO makes it sound a bit impersonal. Smoking is bad for the health. We nominalize smoking here, and in Japanese, tabako wo suu koto wa kenkou ni warui desu. Tabako wo suu koto wa kenkou ni warui desu. This sounds like a general fact, but you can also say it using no. Tabako wo suu no wa kenkou ni warui desu. Tabako wo suu no wa kenkou ni warui desu. Here, you're emotionally invested. Maybe you know someone personally who's had health problems because of smoking. Next example, did you know she got married last year? She got married last year needs to be nominalized as it's a direct object of the whole sentence. Let's use KOTO. 去年、彼女が結婚したことを知っていますか? 去年、彼女が結婚したことを知っていますか? Again, note that the subject of the subordinate clause kanojo takes the subject particle ga. We can also nominalize using the particle no and impart an emotional connection. 去年、彼女が結婚したのを知っていますか? 去年、彼女が結婚したのを知っていますか? Again, an emotional connection. Maybe she was an ex-girlfriend. Don't forget to close the window. To close the window is the direct object and needs to be nominalized. Using KOTO, 窓を 閉めることを忘れないでください。窓を閉めることを忘れないでください。And using no, 窓を閉めるのを忘れないでください。窓を閉めるのを忘れないでください。You're emotionally invested using no, so maybe you say this because you're the owner of the house and you don't want anyone breaking in and entering through the window. Next example, I'm thinking of buying a car. Buying a car is the direct object and needs to be nominalized. Using koto, 車を買うことを考えています。車を買うことを考えています。And using no, 車を買うのを考えています。車を買うのを考えています。By using no, you impart an emotional connection. Maybe you badly need that car. If the clause or sentence that needs to be nominalized ends with a noun da or noun des construction, when you use koto to nominalize, the da or des changes to dearu, then you add koto, or it changes to da toyu plus koto. So that's dearu koto or da toyu koto. To nominalize using no, you change the da or des to na, and then you add the no. That's nano. Let's look at some examples. The sentence, it's dangerous that it's a tsunami. It's a tsunami has to be nominalized, and nominalizing using koto, that would be 津波であることは危ないです。津波であることは危ないです。And using the other style, 津波だということは危ないです。津波だということは危ないです。And using no, that becomes 津波なのは危ないです。津波なのは危ないです。Using koto, you're emotionally detached from the statement, like making a general statement. While using no, you have an emotional connection. Perhaps you will be personally affected if there were a tsunami. The sentence, I'm so happy it's a baby girl. It's a baby girl is a noun clause because in Japanese that would be onna noko desu. Nominalizing using koto, that would be 女の子であることはとても嬉しいです。女の子であることはとても嬉しいです。And using the other style, 女の子だということはとても嬉しいです。女の子だということはとても嬉しいです。And using no, that becomes 女の子なのはとても嬉しいです。女の子なのはとても嬉しいです。Because we did not indicate who is experiencing the happiness in our Japanese translations, with koto, you imply that someone else could be happy that it's a baby girl. But with no, it's clear that you yourself are the one who's happy that it's a baby girl. So using no here to nominalize is the more accurate translation of the English sentence, I'm so happy it's a baby girl. If the clause to be nominalized ends with an E adjective, there's not much to remember. You simply put the E adjective directly before koto or no when nominalizing. Example, the sentence, it's natural that babies are cute. That babies are cute needs to be nominalized. And using koto, 赤ちゃんがかわいいことは当たり前です。赤ちゃんがかわいいことは当たり前です。And using no, 赤ちゃんがかわいいのは当たり前です。赤ちゃんがかわいいのは当たり前です。With koto, the nuance is you're a bit distant. Maybe you're saying this as a biological fact. Whereas with no, there's the nuance you're emotionally connected. Maybe you're talking about your own baby. And one more example. It's strange that this year's winter is warm. That this year's winter is warm needs to be nominalized. And using koto, 今年の冬が暖かいことは変です。今年の冬が暖かいことは変です。And using no, 今年の冬が暖かいのは変です。今年の冬が暖かいのは変です。With koto, you are emotionally distant, so maybe you say this as a general observation. And using no, you have a more emotional connection. Maybe you're an avid skier and don't like the warm winter because there isn't enough snow. If the clause you're nominalizing ends with a na adjective, that becomes na koto and na no when you nominalize. Let's look at some examples. They make sure that the baby is healthy. That the baby is healthy needs to be nominalized. Healthy or genki na is a na adjective. So using koto, 彼らは赤ちゃんが元気なことを確かめる。彼らは赤ちゃんが元気なことを確かめる。And using no, 彼らは赤ちゃんが元気なのを確かめる。彼らは赤ちゃんが元気なのを確かめる。With no, you communicate a more personal connection. Maybe you're related to the baby. I understood from the news that he is famous. That he is famous needs to be nominalized. Famous or 有名な is a na adjective. Using koto, 彼が有名なことはニュースでわかった。彼が有名なことはニュースでわかった。And using no, 彼が有名なのはニュースでわかった。彼が有名なのはニュースでわかった。Again, there's an emotional connection using no. Maybe you know him personally and did not realize he was famous until you read the paper. Now, when must you use koto and not no? You must use koto if koto is part of a set pattern or formula for certain verb conjugations. For example, to express experience, the formula is plain past form of the verb plus koto ga aru, or that's ta koto ga aru. Occasional occurrence is expressed as dictionary form of the verb or ru koto ga aru. Ability can be expressed using ru koto ga dekiru. I decide to is expressed using the pattern ru koto ni suru, and the expression it will be decided to uses the pattern ru koto ni naru. These are all verb conjugations that we will study in detail in future lessons. For these patterns, you must use koto and not no. You must also use koto if what you're saying is abstract, indirect, or general. For example, the saying, to live is to love somebody. To live and to love somebody have to be nominalized using koto because this is an abstract concept. In Japanese, 生きることは誰かを愛することです。生きることは誰かを愛することです。Another example, seeing is believing. Both seeing and believing have to be nominalized using koto because this statement is also abstract, indirect, and general. In Japanese, 見ることは信じることです。見ることは信じることです。Another example, selling alcohol to minors is illegal. This is a general statement about the law, so we use koto. In Japanese, 未成年者にアルコールを売ることは違反です。未成年者にアルコールを売ることは違反です。Next example, the sentence, anyone knows that Shakespeare wrote Hamlet. This is a general statement of fact, so we use koto to nominalize that Shakespeare wrote Hamlet. And in Japanese, we say, シェイクスピアがハムレットを書いたことは誰でも知っている。シェイクスピアがハムレットを書いたことは誰でも知っている。As we said earlier, it's preferable to use no when you have an emotional involvement in what you're saying. That's why when you express likes and dislikes, suki and kirai, you preferably use no rather than koto when nominalizing clauses. For example, I like playing the piano. Because there's obviously an emotional connection here, you like playing the piano, it's better to use no when nominalizing. And in Japanese, we say, 私はピアノを弾くのが好きです。私はピアノを弾くのが好きです。But you can also use koto and say, 私はピアノを弾くことが好きです。私はピアノを弾くことが好きです。 Next example, the sentence, I like making sushi. In Japanese, sushi wo tsukuru no ga suki desu. Sushi wo tsukuru no ga suki desu. You may also use koto with less of an emotional connection. Sushi wo tsukuru koto ga suki desu. Sushi wo tsukuru koto ga suki desu. Next sentence, I hate cleaning my room. In Japanese, 私は部屋を掃除するのが嫌いです。私は部屋を掃除するのが嫌いです。And using koto with less of an emotional connection, 私は部屋を掃除することが嫌いです。私は部屋を掃除することが嫌いです。Now, when must you use no when nominalizing? You must use no if the verb in your main sentence is a verb of perception, such as to see or miru, to be visible or mieru, to hear or kiku, to be audible or kikoeru, to feel or kanjiru, and to taste or ajiwau. For example, the sentence, I saw mommy kissing Santa Claus. Our main verb is saw, which is a verb of perception. Hence, we must use no to nominalize the subordinate clause, mommy kissing Santa Claus. In Japanese, お母さんがサンタさんをキスしたのを見た。お母さんがサンタさんをキスしたのを見た。Using koto would be wrong because mita, to see, is a verb of perception. Next example, I will listen to you sing a Japanese song. The verb in our main sentence is will listen, which is a verb of perception. Hence, we must use no to nominalize you sing a Japanese song. And in Japanese, we say, あなたが日本の歌を歌うのを聞きます。あなたが日本の歌を歌うのを聞きます。It would not be acceptable to use koto because the verb kikimasu, will listen, is a verb of perception. I hear the children laughing. We need to flip this sentence in Japanese because this isn't active hearing, but spontaneous hearing. And the sentence changes to, the children laughing is audible, and we have to use the intransitive verb kikoeru, to be audible. In Japanese, we say, 子供たちが笑っているのが聞こえます。子供たちが笑っているのが聞こえます。Using koto would not be correct because kikoemasu is a verb of perception. Kiku, to listen actively, and kikoeru, to be audible, are what you'd call a transitive and intransitive verb pair. We will tackle transitive and intransitive verb pairs in a future lesson. You must also use no to nominalize when you want to be emphatic. It is so and so that did this or that. Let's look at some examples. The sentence, it is he who killed her. Who killed her must be nominalized using no because you want to emphasize it is he and no one else who killed her. In Japanese, 彼女を殺したのは彼だ。彼女を殺したのは彼だ. Using koto would be incorrect. Next example. It was on Saturday that it rained. That it rained must be nominalized using no because you want to emphasize that it happened on Saturday and not on any other day. In Japanese, 雨が降ったのは土曜日です。雨が降ったのは土曜日です. Using koto would be incorrect. It was I who saved you. Who saved you should be nominalized with no because we're emphasizing that it was I and not anybody else who saved you. In Japanese, 君を助けたのは俺だ。君を助けたのは俺だ. Using koto would be incorrect. You must also use no when you're making an explanatory sentence. Let me give you an example. Someone says to you, "Oh, you're late," and you reply, "That's because my alarm didn't go off." My alarm didn't go off is an explanatory sentence, and you would give that nuance by nominalizing that whole sentence using no. Let's look at some examples. Now let's look at the previous dialogue more closely. Oh, you're late. 遅れましたね. 遅れましたね. That's because my alarm clock didn't go off. 目覚まし時計が鳴らなかったのです。目覚まし時計が鳴らなかったのです。Or the no is phonetically shortened to n, and you'd hear 目覚まし時計が鳴らなかったんです。目覚まし時計が鳴らなかったんです。You would hear the explanatory no or n des all the time in normal conversation. To someone who is pale, maybe someone would ask, "Are you okay? 大丈夫ですか? 大丈夫ですか?" And you get the reply, "Oh, I have a cold." 風邪をひいちゃったのです。風邪をひいちゃったのです。Or 風邪をひいちゃったんです。風邪をひいちゃったんです。The reply is an explanatory sentence as to why he doesn't look okay. It's because I have a cold. And to someone who's nervous, you can ask, どうしたのですか? どうしたのですか? Or どうしたんですか? どうしたんですか? You're already nominalizing どうした here, meaning that you want an explanation. And you might get a reply such as, "Oh, I forgot my report." リポートを忘れたのです。リポートを忘れたのです。Or リポートを忘れたんです。リポートを忘れたんです。To explain why he looks nervous. So to summarize, in this lesson, we learned how to make subordinate clauses using KOTO and no, to transform whole sentences that end in a noun, adjective, or verb into grammatical nouns that can substitute wherever nouns can be in a sentence, whether as a subject, predicate, direct object, indirect object, and so on. In most cases, KOTO and no are interchangeable when making subordinate clauses. KOTO means fact and is used to nominalize clauses or sentences to which you don't have an emotional connection. The sentence or clause is abstract, indirect, or general. You must also use KOTO when it is part of a set pattern or formula for verb conjugation, such as to express ability, experience, or occasional occurrence. We will cover these in future lessons. And you use no to nominalize when you want to express a personal or emotional connection to the sentence or clause you're nominalizing. You must also use no when the verb in the main sentence is a verb of perception, such as to see, hear, or feel. And you also need to use no when making emphatic sentences. It is I who did this. これをやったのは僕です。And you also use no when offering an explanation. It's because I have a headache. 頭が痛いのです。So this ends our lesson on making subordinate clauses using no and KOTO. So I'll see you in the next lesson. 頑張りましょう. If you're serious about becoming fluent in Japanese, it's important to practice daily, learn grammar, and build up vocabulary. My whole course is designed to give you a strong basic foundation in the Japanese language that you can build solidly on. So please click like, share, or subscribe, and watch the next video in the series. 日本語の勉強に頑張ってください。じゃあまたね。